Good evening, and welcome to tonight's crucial discussion. We gather to delve into a topic of profound historical weight and persistent contemporary relevance: the question of whether government reparations should be provided to the descendants of those subjected to slavery. This is a conversation that touches upon the very foundations of our nation, its history, and the enduring legacies that shape our present society. It is a debate that often elicits strong emotions and deeply held convictions, and our aim tonight is to explore the multifaceted arguments with clarity and respect. Joining us are two distinguished guests: Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a renowned historian and social justice advocate who will argue in favor of reparations, and Mr. Samuel Green, a respected political analyst and commentator, who will present arguments against, particularly concerning direct financial reparations. Our format will begin with opening statements from each speaker, followed by 2 rounds of moderated discussion, and will conclude with closing statements. We hope this debate provides illumination on this complex issue.
Thank you, Alex. The issue before us is not merely one of historical accounting, but of profound moral and ethical imperative. Chattel slavery, as it was practiced in this nation, was not merely an unfortunate episode. It was a foundational pillar of economic development for centuries, an institution of unimaginable brutality and dehumanization. Its consequences did not magically vanish with emancipation. Instead, they have cascaded through generations, manifesting as deeply entrenched social, economic, and psychological disparities that continue to afflict African American communities today. We see these legacies in the persistent wealth gap, in disparities in education, healthcare, housing, and in the very fabric of our justice system. These are not accidental outcomes. They are the direct and foreseeable results of centuries of unpaid labor, stolen opportunities, and systemic discrimination that followed slavery, including Jim Crow laws, redlining, and mass incarceration. Therefore, reparations are not, as some might suggest, a handout or an attempt to assign blame to individuals today. Rather, they represent a comprehensive effort towards restorative justice. It is a nation's solemn duty to acknowledge the profound harm it inflicted and from which it systematically benefited, and to take tangible steps to repair that harm. This repair can take many forms, and it's crucial to understand its breadth. Yes, direct financial payments to descendants, acknowledging the stolen labor and wealth, could be one component. But equally vital are substantial investments in educational endowments for Black students, funding for community-led development initiatives in historically marginalized neighborhoods, and support for healthcare programs designed to address specific racial health disparities. Furthermore, reparations must include land restitution where feasible, and comprehensive public apologies coupled with robust historical truth-telling efforts to ensure that the full story of slavery and its aftermath is understood by all citizens. The ultimate goal is not merely to close economic gaps, but to foster genuine reconciliation and to build a society where the promises of liberty and justice are, at long last, available to all, irrespective of their ancestors' bondage. This is about mending the soul of the nation, acknowledging an unpayable debt, and striving for a more just and equitable future.
Thank you, Alex and Dr. Hayes. There is no debate, and there should be no debate, about the abhorrent nature of slavery. It was an indefensible institution, a profound stain on human history, and its cruelty is undeniable. Acknowledging this historical truth, however, does not automatically lead to the conclusion that government-led financial reparations in the 21st century are a just, practical, or ultimately beneficial solution. Indeed, I believe such a policy, however well-intentioned, would be fraught with insurmountable challenges and could potentially engender more societal division than healing. Firstly, the sheer passage of time presents a formidable obstacle. We are talking about an injustice that formally ended over a century and a half ago. attempting to assign financial liability to current generations of taxpayers, many of whom are descendants of immigrants who arrived long after slavery was abolished or whose ancestors were not slaveholders, raises significant questions of fairness and collective responsibility for events so distant in the past. Secondly, the logistical complexities are staggering. How would we definitively identify eligible recipients? What criteria would be used to prove direct descendancy and, more crucially, demonstrable harm today solely attributable to the enslavement of an ancestor generations removed? The potential for fraud, for bureaucratic quagmires, and for endless litigation is immense, threatening to consume vast resources, with no guarantee of equitable outcomes. Furthermore, there is a real risk that such a program could exacerbate racial tensions and create new grievances. Would this not lead to a divisive calculus of historical suffering, pitting different groups against each other? And what of the economic impact? The sums discussed are often astronomical, and the diversion of such resources would inevitably impact other essential public services and investments that benefit all citizens. I contend that our societal efforts and resources are better directed towards contemporary, universal programs designed to combat poverty, enhance educational opportunities, and ensure equality for all disadvantaged Americans, regardless of their ancestry. Let us focus on policies that address present-day inequalities comprehensively, fostering a society where every individual has the chance to thrive, rather than attempting to financially adjudicate the sins of distant generations through race-specific measures that could prove profoundly divisive and ultimately counterproductive. Our focus must be on building a unified future, not on creating new contentions based on the tragic divisions of the past.
Thank you both for those comprehensive opening statements. Dr. Hayes, a common argument against reparations, as Mr. Green alluded to, is the significant passage of time and the notion that current taxpayers, including recent immigrants or those whose ancestors were not involved in slavery, shouldn't bear the financial burden. How do you reconcile the principle of restorative justice with these legitimate concerns about contemporary fairness and responsibility?
That's a critical question, Alex, and it touches upon the nature of national responsibility. When we speak of reparations, we're not assigning personal guilt to contemporary individuals. Instead, we are asserting that the nation-state, as an enduring entity, accrued profound, unjust benefits from centuries of slave labor and subsequently perpetuated systemic discrimination. These weren't isolated incidents, but state-sanctioned policies. Governments routinely honored debts and treaty obligations incurred generations, even centuries prior. Think of sovereign bonds or land treaties with indigenous nations. The principle is that the nation, as a continuous legal and moral entity, remains responsible for its historical commitments and for redressing systemic injustices from which it derives substantial economic and structural advantages. The benefits of slavery weren't confined to slaveholders. They built industries, infrastructure, and national wealth. Conversely, the disadvantages were systematically passed down through discriminatory laws and practices, creating a chasm of opportunity. So the cost should be seen as a national investment in rectifying a foundational wrong, an investment from which a more just and equitable society benefiting all can emerge. It's about the collective acknowledging and addressing a collective harm.
Mr. Green, proponents of reparations frequently point to historical precedents, such as the reparations paid to Japanese American citizens interned during World War II, or compensation programs for Holocaust victims. From your perspective, what makes the case for reparations for slavery fundamentally different or, in your view, less tenable than these often cited instances?
Those are important examples, Alex, but I believe there are crucial distinctions that make the case of slavery significantly more complex and less directly analogous. Firstly, in the case of Japanese American internees, the vast majority of recipients were direct survivors of the injustice. They personally experienced the wrongful internment, and the reparations were made to them or their immediate heirs within a few decades. Similarly, while reparations related to the Holocaust have involved complex negotiations and multiple forms of compensation, many programs targeted direct survivors or their immediate families, and often involve specific assets or claims against entities directly involved in the persecution. The perpetrator, the Nazi regime and its collaborators, was clearly identifiable, and the victims were, in many cases, still alive to receive some measure of redress. With slavery, we are dealing with a temporal gap of over 150 years since its abolition. There are no living survivors of chattel slavery itself. The task of tracing lineage accurately across so many generations, and then quantifying specific harm attributable solely to that ancestral enslavement, distinct from all other subsequent historical and socio-economic factors, becomes exponentially more difficult, if not impossible, to do with fairness and precision. The scale, the timeline, and the lack of direct survivorship for the original crime create a fundamentally different set of challenges.
Mr. Green, you've expressed strong reservations about direct financial reparations. If that particular avenue is, in your view, unworkable or undesirable, what specific, substantial, and targeted actions do you believe are genuinely necessary to address the clearly documented, lingering economic and social disparities that many, including Dr. Hayes, trace directly back to slavery and its enduring aftermath?
That's the pivotal question, Alex. How do we move forward constructively? I advocate for robust, large-scale, and sustained investments, but channeled through race-neutral policies that aim to uplift all historically underserved communities and address present-day inequality at its roots. This means significantly increased federal and state funding for public education in disadvantaged areas, from early childhood programs through to higher education and vocational training, ensuring equitable resources and opportunities for every child. It means targeted investments in healthcare infrastructure and services within these communities to tackle health disparities. It involves aggressive policies to promote affordable housing, community development, and economic empowerment, such as supporting small business creation, improving access to capital, and revitalizing infrastructure like transportation and broadband access in neglected regions. Crucially, these initiatives should be available based on socioeconomic need and geographic disadvantage, not explicitly on race or ancestry. By focusing on current inequities with universal, needs-based solutions, we can address the legacies of historical injustices, including slavery, in a manner that unites society around common goals of fairness and opportunity, rather than creating new divisions based on historical claims. The aim is to create a level playing field for everyone struggling today.
Dr. Hayes, Mr. Green raises the immense logistical hurdles, the challenges of identifying eligible recipients, determining the precise nature and extent of reparations, and preventing potential fraud. These are undeniably significant practical concerns. Could you outline what you believe would constitute a feasible framework for how such a complex undertaking could be managed justly and effectively so that it doesn't become mired in the problems he anticipates? The complexity of the task is undeniable, Alex. But complexity should never serve as an excuse for inaction when justice is at stake. History is replete with examples of nations tackling monumental challenges. I envision a multi-stage, multifaceted approach, beginning with the establishment of an independent, expert commission, much like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but with a broader mandate. This commission would be tasked with several key functions. Firstly, to conduct a comprehensive study to meticulously document the economic impact of slavery and subsequent discriminatory practices. Secondly, to develop clear and transparent criteria for eligibility. This might involve a combination of lineage verification, perhaps through DNA and genealogical records, alongside community-based mechanisms for those whose records were destroyed or obscured by the system of slavery itself. The forms of reparation, as I mentioned earlier, would be diverse. Individual financial payments could be one aspect, calculated based on models of unpaid labor and compounded interest, or other agreed-upon metrics. Alongside this, significant funds would be directed towards community-level investments, education, health, economic development, and land acquisition programs specifically for descendant communities. We could also explore educational benefits, housing assistance, and the establishment of cultural heritage institutions. The key is a transparent process, robust oversight to prevent fraud, and a commitment to flexibility and learning as the program unfolds. It's difficult, yes, but not impossible if the political will exists.
In closing, let me reiterate my profound acknowledgement of the horrors of slavery and the deep wounds it inflicted upon this nation, wounds whose scars are still visible. The moral wrong is not in question. However, as we consider the path forward, I must maintain that attempting to implement direct, race-based financial reparations so many generations removed from the actual institution of slavery is an impractical and potentially deeply divisive endeavor. The risk of creating new injustices in our pursuit to remedy ancient ones is too great. Identifying who would pay and who would justifiably benefit across the vast and complex tapestry of modern American society, fraught with intermarriage, immigration, and the sheer passage of time, seems an insurmountable challenge to execute fairly. We risk entangling ourselves in a backward-looking process that could inflame societal divisions rather than heal them. Our focus, I passionately believe, should be forward-looking. It must be centered on achieving genuine equality of opportunity for all Americans today and vigorously addressing current systemic inequities through robust, well-funded, and universally accessible programs in education, healthcare, and economic development. Let us dedicate our national will and resources to policies that unite us in building a shared, prosperous, and equitable future, rather than those that might divide us by attempting to precisely quantify and compensate for the sins of a distant past through financial transactions. True progress lies in our collective commitment to the present and future betterment of all citizens. Thank you.
It is crucial to understand that the call for reparations is not about assigning personal blame or seeking to punish present-day individuals for the actions of their ancestors. It is about national accountability. It is about acknowledging that the United States as a nation sanctioned, upheld, and economically benefited from a brutal system of human exploitation for centuries, and then failed to adequately address its devastating and enduring consequences upon emancipation. These consequences are not abstract historical footnotes. They are tangible realities in the form of persistent racial disparities in wealth, health, education, and justice. True national healing, genuine reconciliation, cannot be achieved by simply wishing these legacies away or by suggesting that general social programs, while important, are a sufficient response to such a specific and profound historical injustice. They are not a substitute for targeted repair. The path to reparations will undoubtedly be complex, as all significant societal transformations are. But the pursuit of justice, however arduous, is a fundamental moral obligation of any society that claims to value fairness and equality. The logistical challenges are not insurmountable if met with genuine commitment, creativity, and the political will to make amends. This is a matter of justice long overdue, a debt that continues to accrue interest in the currency of inequality and division. We must find the courage and the collective will to finally and fully address this seminal aspect of our nation's history, not as a means of division, but as a profound act of national repair and a step towards a truly unified future.
Dr. Evelyn Hayes, Mr. Samuel Green, thank you both for your exceptionally insightful and articulate contributions to what is undeniably a challenging and deeply important discussion. You've given our audience a great deal to consider. The complexities and passions surrounding the issue of reparations are evident, and you have both navigated them with rigor and conviction. We encourage our audience to continue to engage with this topic thoughtfully, to research further, and to consider the multifaceted arguments presented here tonight. Thank you for joining.